Those in favor of that motion will say aye.
We're halfway through Virginia's 2010 General Assembly session. Which bills have moved forward? Which ones have failed? How are legislators tackling the budget? Tonight, an editorial roundtable. This is What Matters. Good evening, I'm Cathy Lewis. It's been a season of snow in a blizzard of bad news about Virginia's budget. That's just one of the harsh realities we'll consider tonight with our editorial roundtable. Joining us this week, and we're glad to have him back, Jeff Maisey, the publisher and editor with Veer magazine. Don Luzzatto is the editorial page editor of the Virginian-Pilot. Democratic blogger Vivian Paige joins us, and Republican blogger Brian Kirwin joins us as well. Nice to have all of you with us tonight.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
I think we should start with the Super Bowl because we'll just have to get that out of the way to start with. Halftime show at the Super Bowl, just before, you have to know that just before we started the program, that's what we were talking about. So while it's fresh in our memory, halftime, what do you think?
Not my favorite performance by The Who. I've seen better.
Okay.
But,
I have one comment. Aren't they the band that said, "I hope I die before I get old"? I think they were right.
They were.
Oh.
Are you sure they didn't?
Oh,
they were.
Grim?
They were. Oh
my
you
gosh.
know, I remember them from the 1970s
Yeah.
musical, The Tommy.
Yeah.
Nothing
Not
like
so
that
much.
last night.
Well, you're the arts and culture guy. What did you think?
I am. It was greatly disappointing because Roger Daltrey performed at Chrysler Hall back in November, and he put on such an incredible show for the 2,000 people that were there that they got a real Who show. Pete Townshend's son played guitar. This was a major disappointment, not so much for Daltrey's performance there, but Pete Townsend was really weak, and his windmill wasn't hitting on anything. And if this is the way they're going to launch a new world tour, then they're in sad shape.
Not so much.
It's not a good promotion at all.
Stay close to home. Stay close to home.
Certainly no Bruce Springsteen or Prince.
There you go. That's a fact. That's a fact. Well, I'm glad to have all of you back with us tonight. Now, when last we spoke, and Jeff, you were not with us at that time, so we will not hold you responsible for anything.
Okay.
We were in the thick of it with Hampton Roads Transit. Very controversial time. The then executive director very much under fire, and I think what we said was, some of us said he would be leaving that post, and some of us said he would not
be fired.
Be fired.
Be fired.
Okay, so you say you were correct.
He wasn't
on
fired.
That. Yeah,
he wasn't fired.
So what do you think about how that worked out and where we go from here?
Well, I think that it was time for something to happen, and having Phil Shuket in the position is going to actually move us forward in terms of light rail. There's some concern that he may not know how to run the transit part, but nevertheless, I think that. That having Michael Towns out of the way should take away all the pressure now for talking about why light rail is over budget. So we'll see what happens.
Vivian's exactly right, and I called some elected officials, so I get the same problem. Phil's great for writing a ship. I don't know if he's great at running a bus company. Light rail sounds like he'd be just the man to get it on the right track and get at least the political support back on board that was falling off. But there is a longer-term problem there.
Yeah. Do you think a piece of it was restoring some credibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most important thing now is to restore some credibility and to get light rail, which is the lion's part of what HRT is going to be doing for the next year and a half and for the future, back on track. And Shuket has a history of running big projects very well. It's exactly the kind of person that they needed to put in charge of this to get it moving.
Well, I'll tell you, the other transportation issue that we talked about buses last time. You've been doing a lot of coverage, Jeff, on high-speed rail. That's another thing that's happened since last we all got together is this whole all of these town hall meetings, all of these meetings where the state has come in to see what we thought about high-speed rail. You all did a lot of coverage on that.
Yeah, we did. We felt that that was probably the most important issue facing Hampton Roads and the future of Hampton Roads for decades to come is high-speed rail connecting Southside Hampton Roads with Richmond and then to the overall rail as part of Obama's plan for connecting all inner cities, major cities across the nation. Unfortunately, Virginia did not get the amount that it originally requested, only $75 million, less than a tenth of the original amount requested. And that was to upgrade the high-speed corridor between Richmond and Washington, D.C. We have an opportunity here on February 17th. The State Transportation Board is going to vote on which alternative. We are Tier 2, Hampton Roads as part of that whole plan. Alternative one favored high-speed rail between Hampton Roads and Richmond, but maintaining the current route on the peninsula as is with some upgrades. So we will know at that point. At that point, the state board will put in the applications for federal funding for Tier 2 track, which is Norfolk Southern puts that amount at $75 million.
I tell you something, the thing that I thought was so interesting about all of that, and we can talk about whether we were a bit of a day late and a dollar short on it, but the thing I thought was very interesting about that is the way the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization came together, all these elected officials unanimously saying, yeah, we think that 460 route is the best route, even though you had Peninsula, mayors who certainly had a vested interest in seeing that come along the peninsula.
But I think I mean, there's no choice. The south side of Hampton Roads is where the people are. It's where the attractions are. It only makes sense. Putting it on the peninsula where it has historically been doesn't make any sense. And I think it was a fine moment of cooperation, which we don't have very often in Hampton Roads.
It was a first for Hampton Roads. Also, if you look at the track along 460, it's a straight shot. The way the track is on the peninsula, there's no way you're going to get a train to go 110 miles.
Right.
You can never get that speed. What we also have going for us on the south side is that it does connect with the light rail. And one of the things that will really jumpstart light rail throughout the community is if we do get the approval for for high-speed rail to Hampton Roads, where it comes to Harbor Park and downtown, then Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, everyone's going to want to get on board light rail because we will have high-speed rail intersecting right here in Norfolk.
And all of which are great ideas, but just as a reality check, you said less than 1/10 of the monies that were allocated, and the irony was the big meeting, the big South Side meeting was on the very night that President Obama had announced in Florida. Most of it's going there, right? I mean, tough stuff for us.
Florida is going to be more important at some year, maybe 2012,
perhaps,
maybe.
do you think? Yeah. So how much of that then, of that 1/10, you said most of it's going to the Richmond to D.C. corridor. So as a practical matter, how much of that do we expect to? I mean, is this something that will happen if the money ever gets there? And good for us, we've made a decision, gotten on the same page about it.
The $75 million that was awarded to the Commonwealth of Virginia will go for the track between Prince William County and Stafford County in Virginia, where there's a real bottleneck there. They will apply, the state board will apply for additional money for what is Tier 2.
And that would be our
Yeah, so that does not affect Hampton Roads whatsoever.
So I guess even if the money's not there yet, it's probably a good thing that everybody got on the same page. 1,000 people out to the meetings. I mean, I was kind of impressive, the number of people that turned out for it.
Well, I think you're seeing signs that we're finally getting our heads in the right place on high-speed rail. We've made a decision about where we're going to put it, that it's going to be on the south side, and that's where we need to be focusing our attention. And we hadn't gotten there. It had taken us decades to make even that simple decision among a bunch of regional governments.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The Federal Rail Administration that ultimately allocates the money and approves it only recognizes the Hampton Roads Transit Planning Organization as the legal entity that they would take serious whatsoever.
Right.
And then they vote
only
unanimously.
one.
Right.
So that carries a lot of weight.
That's a good sign.
That is a very
So
good
as we
sign.
look to the General Assembly, we talked about this terrifically difficult budget year. I'm maintaining my transportation theme now here. We're talking about high-speed rail and light rail and roads. I think we're good. I think we finished, right? We're done. So we've got what's still a $4.4 to $4.2 billion shortfall, depending on how you look at it. Some people are saying, look, when Governor McDonnell came in, he probably should have put some amendments in to make the budget his own, or to adjust the Kane budget and put some of the stamp
There are
on
two
it.
schools of thought, and we were discussing earlier that one of the problems with Obama in healthcare was that he ceded authority for that to the Congress, and we all see where that got us. There is some frustration, including in the governor's own party, that he's allowing the General Assembly to sort of draft this next budget. They're frustrated by that. They don't want to be the bad guys because it's going to be a very, very ugly session. There's a lot of jobs that are going to be left behind, a lot of state workers are going to be out of work, and they don't want to be the bad guys either. And this is going to be a very difficult next month and a half.
Well, McDonnell probably realizes what you left out. He has to deal with a bicameral legislature of two different parties. He can make all the recommendations he wants. They're going to be dead on arrival in the Senate. So he very wisely stepped back and said, boys, you guys negotiate. I'll help you along the way.
So he's going to turn the heat up.
but I'm not going to embarrass you all by putting out something that's going to be politically attacked by the other side. You guys tell me how close you are, and I'll step in if I need to.
I mean, he did win by 20 points, so he's got a bully pulpit. He's got.
You still have a problem with that.
No, I'm just saying he's got. I'm saying he's got a bully pulpit, and he has a mandate. If anybody has a mandate, he does.
He doesn't want to score political points. He wants to get the job done.
No. It's not about scoring points. It's about leadership. I mean, he's got a mandate from the people of Virginia to solve the problem.
You know, he doesn't have to hold a press conference to be a leader. He can talk to these people individually.
Well, except that apparently he's not talking to them individually. Otherwise, they wouldn't be complaining about it. We're looking at this the only thing we've done so far on the budget, the only thing that has really been public on the budget is that they've ruled out the $1.9 billion tax increase related to a 1% increase in the income tax rate. So we know for sure, if they pass the other parts of the budget that Tim Kaine put in, we know for sure we're $2 billion short. And no one has come up with where this $2 billion is going to come from. The other parts of the budget are already pretty painful. So now we're going to have to cut another $2 billion if we're not willing to raise the taxes in any way. If I were here, I may sit back and wait myself. You know,
we're only 6 years after the largest tax increase in Virginia's history, and it still ain't enough money. We need another tax increase.
Well, except that
every 6 years.
The governor so far, the only thing he's talked about as far as budget is concerned is adding additional spending. So if you want to talk about additional spending,
he presented cuts to match his proposed spending increases.
Well, look,
and the Senate actually agreed with him and said we can work with this.
But the pain associated with the point is that the pain is so severe. You could close every state university, every community college, with the exception of UVA, and still not close the gap.
That's exactly right.
This is a huge problem, and it's going to take leadership from Richmond to sort of explain what our choices are. Right now, it's just sort of we're going to reopen the closed rest stops, and we're going to do a couple other small things. I think at some point somebody's got to stand up and say, here are the choices before us, and here's what we're going to have to do.
And the House hasn't even presented the budget. The Senate hasn't even presented the budget. McDonnell can't present a budget.
No,
there's actually a bill.
That happens in the next week or so.
Right.
Budget week comes up the third week in February, and that's when you'll go through that whole process of the budgets being presented and all these kinds of things. That's all. But that doesn't mean we haven't had a lot of amendments and proposed members' amendments already to the budget that have been going through the process. The money committees are going. There's a whole section on the website of the state website that you can go and track all of these amendments, and you can track through each one. It's unbelievable. But it's kind of cool because you can track through who's requesting what and try to figure out which one of the legislators are trying to do whatever it is they're trying to do. But ultimately, those money committees are going to have to come up with something, and they're going to need some direction from the governor in terms of what the governor's priorities are.
But does Don have a point about leadership here? I mean, is there you know, if you're a lawmaker, is it not, and you know you're staring this kind of a budget deficit in the face, and I'm not talking about the governor either necessarily, I'm talking about lawmakers in general, is it not then a leadership position to say, you know what, $4.2 billion, a lot of money, here's where I think we should cut it if we have to, or conversely, you know, here are the tolls that I would put on, or here are the taxes that whatever it is. But I'm not hearing that yet, I guess, I'm not hearing anybody talk about in the way that you just did. Here's what $4.2 billion
well, and we've had
like.
a year of this. I mean, one of the great frustrations during the election was that people were not being specific about how they were going to close these gaps.
Right.
And we knew this was coming.
That's right.
And neither Deeds nor McDonnell nor any of their surrogates were being specific about how they intended to solve the financial
We
problem.
can drill offshore.
Yeah.
That might help us in 10 years, though, right?
No, I'm serious. And why is that? Because they know the other side is going to beat the heck out of them.
At some
so
point,
McDonnell's not about to say, you know, I've been governor for a month.
But we've got to, at some point, we've got to put politics aside and actually lead on these issues. And I'm not suggesting that this is, you know, the governor's fault. What I'm suggesting is that we're at the point now where we have to close an enormous gap, and we have some really difficult choices.
It seems like a national epidemic, really. I mean, if you look no further than President Obama trying to get anything accomplished,
Right.
and now you're being stonewalled for political reasons. That Republicans can prevent anything from happening, thinking they're going to get a political gain, you know, a year or 2 years down the road from that.
Yeah, it's just a mere coincidence the Republicans actually have public opinion on their side, so that kind of helps.
Well, but to go back to the president, I mean, when he abandoned leadership on health care, it doomed that.
Absolutely.
Whatever he wanted to do, when he did not use the mandate he had from the American people to actually get that done and craft it, it wasn't going to pass.
You think that's where we are now with this? That will well, I mean, something's got to happen, right? I mean, we have to have a balanced.
We have
budget,
to have a
so.
balanced budget. It'll be interesting to see it happen.
painful.
Yeah.
Anybody want to make predictions? What are we going to get?
Probably a special session, actually. I mean, my sense is that
How many have we had in the past couple of years?
My
Like 5
sense
out of
is
6?
that based on the timeline, as I understand the way the budget is supposed to be delivered, looking at that week, and then we have certain amount of time for them before they, actually roll the bills together and make it just a House bill, and it gets voted on the whole 9 yards. I don't know that there's enough time. So I think what we're looking at is them coming back in April for a special session to do nothing but deal with this budget. In the meantime, you've got all the localities in Virginia, 137, whatever we have localities, that are sitting back going, okay, we can't do our budgets until you do your budget, so therefore, what are we going to do?
They are petrified.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
They're like, we know how this is going to end, and it's not good for us, and we're going to be stuck with raise taxes or else.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
we've already
absolutely.
had somebody in Norfolk offer to say that we should do that. One of the candidates has already, one of the sitting members of council over the weekend said that we should raise the real estate taxes, and of course that's going to go over really well. Bottom line is what do you do with the localities when the localities have as their primary tool in their toolbox the real estate tax rate? We've seen reductions in the real estate rate as property values have gone up, but if property values are falling, there's only one way to stay even, and that's raise the rate. So
It's coining what's been called in political circles the revenue neutral tax increase.
that's exactly right.
Which I don't know if you can explain to a voter what that is.
Well,
but
Americans don't mind paying more taxes if they think it's going to actually solve the problem. But when they see, important issues and bills get passed or not get passed with all these ridiculous things that get tacked onto them, it just makes everyone sick.
I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true. I hate to disagree, but I believe that there is a segment of people out here who believe that no taxes are appropriate under any circumstances.
Well, I think
and unfortunately, they've gotten really noisy.
There's a lot of it's not just a loud minority. There's a lot of people saying, I feel your pain. You don't have a lot of money, Mr. Government. Neither do I.
I don't either. Right.
Yeah,
I got to make choices.
absolutely.
I got to make hard
Right.
choices too. Well, I tell you, talking about hard choices, this thing with the carrier. You were saying, Brian, you think this is the issue at the moment.
I think there is no bigger regional issue. Light rail is nice. High-speed rail is far in the future. The carriers are now. And if anybody thinks they're going to spend all this money in Florida to bring just one carrier there, I got a bridge tunnel to sell them, because this is a major, major shift in economic impact for a generation.
And the quadrennial review coming out very much supporting the idea that,
Short on
certainly
details, but it set the
it
groundwork.
It didn't come out opposed to it, did it?
No. It came out in favor of it, but
Yeah.
they need some details to justify it.
Well, they need some money. Congress still
that's
needs to appropriate the
$1
money.
billion
I mean,
worth of infrastructure it would take to create what
yeah.
they need in Florida, right?
It makes no sense. I've heard the arguments that we need to distribute our carrier fleet. We have plenty of other places to distribute it.
As if they're all import at the same time,
Right.
ever.
Yeah, exactly. This is a transparently political move, and to send a carrier to Jacksonville makes no sense unless you're trying to also accomplish something else. Now, whether that's jobs, whether it's votes, whether it's whatever.
Both.
Florida gets very popular at certain times in the political cycle, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But do you see this thing? I mean, you're saying this is the regional issue right now. Do you see any opportunity to stop this train? And we should note as well, because I will hear from them, there are lots of people in this community who say, you know what? They're right. We should disperse that carrier
Sure.
fleet. It is too dangerous to have them all in one place. So, we've heard from people who
It's
said,
silly,
look,
though. It's for natural disasters, like a hurricane's coming, like we don't know it's headed here.
Right.
Like they can't go out into port. And like I said before, this isn't Pearl Harbor where all of our ships are lined up on a Sunday morning. One's in dry, one's out to sea, one's out doing maneuvers. It's silly. But the big problem is with the political answer. We've got 2 Democratic senators, the Democratic administration, and a Democratic congressman in that district. If they can't get it done, and they got all the majorities in Washington.
well, and you've got
The head of the DNC.
In the case
Right.
of Senator Jim Webb, you've got somebody who,
Right.
former naval secretary, and he certainly has been doing what he can do. But
we've got
one
all
wonders.
these elected officials in majorities. If they
Yeah.
can't save that, someone's going to ask why.
Yeah.
Why?
All right.
I think there's going to be some electoral payback if that decision's. I mean, the ripples are going to be huge.
Yeah.
I mean, even the ODU study, it's huge.
Yeah.
And if it's 2 carriers and not 1, and I'm sure it will be 2, they're going to decommission 1. We're going to lose that. Nightmare.
It will be significant. I mean, but it's also the challenge this region has always faced, how great it is to have the military and the defense industry here, yet at the same time, you know, it's tough to be that dependent on one industry. And we've certainly tried to wean ourselves and do some other things, but film industry being one of them. And I know that that's one little bit of a bright spot in all this, is there does at least seem to be some effort around adding to the film industry.
Yeah, and that's, you know, there have been numerous films shot in Virginia. It's great. People, when the film industry comes in and does a movie shoot, it brings a lot of revenue, a lot of hotels, a lot of meals are purchased there. And it's also a great way for tourism in the future to showcase Virginia. And people do, if they see a movie is shot somewhere, they do want to visit and see the sights and all of that.
Well, the shot across the bow, and McDonnell really kicked this into gear by putting it in his economic development plan. But there was a film that was shooting in Virginia Beach in the story. It was set in Virginia Beach. And they filmed it in Michigan because the film incentives were better.
Ah, yeah.
That's the #1 talking point on the General Assembly for getting us back to the table for that.
Michigan is doing underwriting spots on National Public Radio. The Economic Development Department of Michigan. Jeff, what's his name? I can't remember the actor's name. I can't remember it. Who does these spots? I mean, you really get your attention. It's just an unusual thing. So apparently they're being pretty aggressive about that.
I wonder how their roads are.
We have 1 minute left, but I promised Brian we would get to this. Delegate Tata withdrew the bill talking about the school start before Labor Day.
What a silly issue. I am waiting for someone to explain to me how going to school in August is going to help a kid taking a test in May.
We always went to school in August. I mean, that bill...
And look how you turned out, Vivian.
It's actually a fairly new occurrence here in Virginia. I'm not that old. Don't y'all laugh.
No. Come on, let's get serious.
But on the peninsula, we always went to school early. So I understand what Virginia Beach... my understanding of the bill was that it was just going to throw it back to the localities to let them make that decision.
Here's the thing. If time in school is so important to student performance, go after spring break before you go after pre-Labor Day. At least it'll be closer to when they're taking the test.
I think we should come out in opposition to blizzards and all snowstorms. I think that will solve the problem.
I like it. You're so courageous politically. I like that about you. Very, very well done. Very, very nicely done. Well, gosh, when next we meet, there will be lots more to talk about. But I'm glad we sort of got back to some of the things we talked about last time as well. And we'll keep an eye on this budget and see where we go. And we'll see if any of our panelists were right when we meet again. Jeff, nice to have you with us tonight. And Vivian and Brian and Don, good to see you all too. Thank you so much. We'll be back in just a moment with a final thought. We talked about this just a bit earlier, but it bears some repeating. We'll take our hats off to Hampton Mayor Molly Ward, not for any partisan politicking, but because as vice chair of the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, she's been the spokesperson in a lot of cases for the chosen route for high-speed rail. She and other peninsula mayors, including Joe Frank of Newport News and Gene Zeidler of Williamsburg, signed off on a plan that puts new high-speed rail service not where you might expect them to support it, through the peninsula. Instead, they were part of a unanimous vote to put new service along the 460 corridor and improved service along Amtrak's existing peninsula tracks. The key is to connect this region to Richmond and the north-south high-speed rail corridor that's coming down the track. High-speed trains that purport to whisk one from Richmond to Washington, all at 110 miles an hour. Now, I've often said that there has been so little progress on transportation that we could rewind and replay many of the conversations we've had over the past 15 years and go out for lunch. But the unanimous vote on this project, whether it happens or not, is a happy harbinger of a shift from reflexive parochialism to a fuller understanding of the fact that we're all in this together. We want to know what you think about that or any of the other ideas we've discussed. And boy, did we get to a lot tonight. No question about it. Lots of ways that you can be in touch with us here at What Matters on our website. It's whatmatters.tv. You can watch this program, because I know you want to watch and see it 2 or 3 times, and any of our past ones as well. You can drop us an email. You can join us on Facebook. You can sign up for our weekly e-bits, and of course we'll be glad to let you know what we're working on in the weeks ahead. And for more local talk, I hope you'll join us on the radio dial for 89.5 WHRV's Hearsay program. That's live each weekday at noon, and we take your calls during that broadcast. And we want to thank you as well for being such faithful viewers of this broadcast. We've seen some information that seems to indicate you like this program, and I think this roundtable concept is probably a big reason for that. So thanks to our colleagues who join us around the table. I'm Cathy Lewis. We'll see you next time for another look at what matters.